Hello everyone, it's me, it's TMNT. I have a beard now, but let's ignore that for a moment. Do you know what really grinds my gears?
You know what really grinds my gears?
The fact that the 2007 CG animated film TMNT was a massive letdown.
I was a huge Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles fan growing up, as are most kids. I mean, they're giant radioactive turtles that know ninjutsu. That sounds awesome. I mainly grew up with the animated series from the mid-2000s, but I eventually did go back and watch the live-action trilogy of films, which, well, 2 out of 3 ain't bad, right?
So when I heard that a brand spanking new Ninja Turtles movie was coming to theaters, I was pumped. I mean, I get to see all my favorite half-shell heroes on the big screen, in person. And what do I get for my anticipation? A mediocre snooze fest of a movie.
For starters, the movie felt like it had barely anything to do with the Ninja Turtles. Instead of being an exciting thrill ride between the Foot Clan and the Green Team, TMNT told a completely different tale of stone soldiers cursed to walk the Earth for centuries in order to capture 13 monsters of supernatural origin. If the Turtles didn't show up after the first 5 minutes, you would mistake this for a completely different movie. In fact, that's my theory. TMNT wasn't always about the Ninja Turtles, and instead was a completely different animated film with its own story, but some executive decided to throw the TMNT in there in order to sell tickets.
You know, part of me wonders if that same executive would then go on to change the movie The Girl Who Wouldn't Die into a very unnecessary American Psycho sequel starring Mila Kunis. Ugh.
Not to mention, the Turtles themselves feel very underdeveloped and one-dimensional. Instead of establishing any personality for these versions of the heroes, it feels like the writers took their defining traits, cranked them up to 11, and made that into their entire character. Raphael was always a bit of a hothead, but in this film he's always brooding and lashing out and miserable. And Leo, oh gosh, I wish they gave him a different personality, because in this film all he does is whine and cry about how much of a self-righteous idiot he is.
Now, one thing that most fans will agree on is that the animation and action sequences in this film totally kick shell. They're probably the best, most redeeming qualities about this movie. In fact, a lot of people thought that since the animation already kind of looked like one, this movie would make an even better video game. It did not.
I'm just gonna take a look at the box art here real quick to see if there's any red flags right off the... But yeah, that didn't take long now, did it? Well, it's nice to have our expectations lowered before we even pop the game in. I can't wait to see more.
Well, folks, let's play some TMNT and get ready to kick some shell. Yes, I feed off your hatred of my puns. Mwah!
First thing you'll notice when starting the game is that it's so cheap it uses comic book style slideshows to tell its story rather than actual cutscenes. Even when they feature cinematics, all it is just reusing scenes from the movie. In fact, the production values in general are very hit or miss. Look at these graphics, for example. I don't know if it's because I'm playing this on an HD TV, but the textures are super blurry and not well defined at all.
Did somebody smear Vaseline all over the camera? What is this?
It's not a big issue for every level, but in this opening stage, which uses the same 3 colors of dark brown, murky green, and gray, colors that blend in with your turtle a little too well, it's easy to lose yourself in the scenery. If I can give compliments to anything, the voice acting isn't half bad. Unfortunately, the legendary Mako passed away long before this game was in development, so we have a completely different voice actor for Splinter. Other than that, the rest of the main cast who voiced the turtles in the movie reprised the roles for the game. The game does start out fun enough. I mean, you move quickly, you can scale walls, shimmy across ledges, do tons of ninja parkour. It feels pretty exhilarating trying to run through these levels as quickly as possible. A main source of criticism for me has to be the combat system. It's boring. The game is split up into 2 sections, point A to point B platforming, and combat sections where you're locked into an arena to fight various mooks and enemies. I feel like combat should have been implemented better, but this works fine. However, there's no other combos in the game aside from your basic maneuvers. All you have is the default system that you either love or hate. For me, it's pretty damn repetitive hitting the same button over and over again.
Each of the turtles do feel unique, though, when it comes to combat. Leonardo is probably the most balanced. Raphael has short range but heavy attacks. Michelangelo can attack the fastest. Donatello has long range, but he attacks slower because of it. He's definitely my least favorite turtle to play as. And plus, each of the turtles have their own special ability. Unfortunately, they all are kind of wasted potential.
For starters, Raphael can climb up walls with his sai. It's slow, and he can only move in one direction, and he can only do it on very specific walls. Donatello can pole vault using his bow staff. It's slow. And 9 times out of 10, he'll either overshoot or undershoot the landing and fall to his death. Michelangelo can hover with his nunchucks. It's slow. And it's not fun.
Are you starting to see a pattern here?
Get this, though. Leonardo's special ability is insane. He can...
Do a... Jesus.
Okay. No. No. How does a 7-foot mutant turtle phase through solid matter like that? Even the in-game explanation is weak. In the opening level, Leo climbs a temple because Splinter wants him to retrieve an amulet that it turns out Splinter put there in the first place.
Like when a child finds an Easter egg that one of their parents must have obviously blatantly put in the open for them to find. I was one of those kids. I was really terrible at finding things when I was younger.
And yet, despite all that, he somehow manages to use the amulet's power to no-clip the environment. How the fudge does that work? It's like when Sonic used a fake emerald to use Chaos Control, despite never being taught how to do so, nor not holding a real Chaos Emerald. This amulet never comes up in conversation again, and we're just expected to believe that Leo can just walk through walls now, even though Splinter says he put the amulet there in the first place, meaning that Splinter must have put a real magical amulet in the temple and left it for his son to find years later. This story is crap.
Also, some of these levels just start to drag on. Either because they have combat sequences that last for way too long, or you'll run into a glitch that'll make you want to bash your head against the wall.
Take, for example, this level with Donatello, where you have to pole vault between sewer grates. I mentioned earlier how easy it is to undershoot and overshoot some of these distances, but I swear, this should have been play tested better. Oh, and don't even get me started on this section. You have to parkour between a series of pillars by jumping from ledge to ledge, but every time I went to make a jump, Donatello wouldn't touch the ledge, but wouldn't grab it. Meaning I fell to my death 17 times!
What kind of idiot would hard-code it so that you could only grab ledges at specific points? If I'm right next to a ledge, just let me grab the freaking ledge! Ugh. The best way I found to actually beat this section was holding down the arrow pad in the direction I wanted to go, and only then would I press jump. But even then, it's a 50-50 shot of whether I actually make it or not. This game is a complete crapshoot sometimes. I think the only other thing of note I could really talk about is the level where you play as all 4 turtles at once. You can switch between them freely, whether you're in combat or platforming.
This level sounds cool in theory, but in practice, meh. It starts to overstay its welcome with how many redundant and endless combat sequences there are, but I can give it this. The turtles all have their own special attack they can perform with one another. Each combination has their own screen nuke, which all look and feel great to pull off. Good job, game! You finally got something right. But that's pretty much all I have to say about TMNT. It didn't hold my interest for very long, and all the while, it seemed like the devs would take 2 steps forward before falling down the stairs back to the first floor landing. They had the chance to do something new and unique with the Turtles, but just gave us a pretty bland license game in response. While it isn't the worst movie tie-in game to ever exist, it was a massive missed opportunity that Ubisoft hasn't really recovered from since, as every Ninja Turtles game that's been released since then has also been met with mixed results and often negative reception.
I don't know. Hopefully, with the release of Mutant Mayhem later this year, the license will get the rejuvenation it needs, and we'll get a good video game for once. Future generations of fans are going to attach themselves to the Ninja Turtles. They're going to be a pop culture icon for many years to come. But, for now, that was TMNT. I've been RegularTrent, and make sure to follow us on Twitter at WilsonClubEnt. We're going to be hosting a poll on there soon, and you guys get to decide what you want the next review that I do is about. Did that make sense? It probably did. You're voting on what I'm going to talk about next. But until next time, take care and spike your hair. I'll see ya.